This episode of the news is supported by our friends at Meliadora Publishing and Permaculture Principles. Together, they bring you the in-depth books needed to develop the skills and tools for a regenerative, bountiful future. Find out more and pick up a copy of Retro Suburbia or Earth Restorer's Guide to Permaculture at permacultureprinciples.com. The News from the Permaculture Podcast is an ongoing series to share news about permaculture as well as when permaculture is in the news, so you can stay informed about what's currently happening in and around the world as it relates to permaculture. In these episodes, I also include updates about what's happening with the Permaculture Podcast and some additional commentary. As we get started, I'd like to thank past guest and friend of the pod, Jeff Christo, for sharing many of the links and other information that went into this episode. You'll find links to our interview together and where to find his book, Utopia, A Permaculture Vision, in the show notes, along with links to everything else mentioned in this episode. In this edition, for news from the world, we have the 2023 Venny Holmgren Environmental Poetry Prize, Ben and Bertha, a new documentary from Happen Films, The Regenerative Landscaper, a book from guest of the show, Eric Olson, Facing a Future of Drought, an article from the New York Times, and a Gardening for Dummies book bundle. Would you like the opportunity to win $1,000 for your work of poetry? Consider entering the 2023 Venny Holmgren Environmental Poetry Prize. The prize, created by Holmgren Design, is to honor Venny Holmgren, who started writing poetry in her late 50s and went on to become a best-selling poet for her work, while at the same time applying her skills as an activist with a commitment to the native forests near her home in New South Wales, where she was arrested twice for obstructing logging trucks. This prize is open for submissions through August 7th, with a submission fee of $10, and will be judged by a two-poet panel consisting of Alison J. Barton and Peter O'Mara, with the winner announced at the Words in Winter Festival in Daylesford, Victoria, Australia, on Sunday, the 27th of August, 2023. Ben and Bertha is a new 40-minute documentary from the great folks at Happen Films, exploring how a community came together to find an answer to their community waste and the solution that resulted. Rather than spoil that for you here, go watch the trailer. I've also reached out to Happen Films about offering a free private online screening and discussion for listeners and patrons of the Permaculture Podcast. I'll let you know if that's something we're able to work out, and details as it comes together. Permaculture teacher and past guest of the show, Eric Olson, has a new book coming out, The Regenerative Landscaper. Based on my previous conversations with Eric and getting to preview a copy of the book, so far I think it's a good one to pick up if you're a professional practitioner looking for a book that can support or expand your existing practices. It's also worth it if you're a backyard amateur who's just getting started, looking to expand your knowledge and share practical tips about plants and permaculture with your neighbors or local community. The Regenerative Landscaper is 520 pages long and published by Synergetic Press. Pre-orders are now open and shipping, with a street date of the 22nd of August 2023, and the paperback retails for $32.95 and the ebook for $14.99. From the New York Times is the article, Spain Turns to Medieval Solutions and Ancient Wisdom. Jeff shared this article with me and a note that, for him, as the climate pressures increase, the impacts become part of the mainstream news cycles, and everyday people are adopting sustainable strategies out of this reality. He's finding that his personal anxiety over climate change and what the future could hold is decreasing. Though I certainly have moments where a piece of news spikes my personal anxiety, in general, I find that overall I'm feeling more hopeful and less concerned myself. It's not just permaculture practitioners and environmental activists engaging in this any longer, as every day we're joined by more of our friends, family, and neighbors. I see additional articles about governors and politicians and national leaders pushing more firmly for dramatic change in the face of our climate future. And though we still face monumental tasks to get from where we are to where we need to be in this climate-changed world, the voices that we hear are not just our own, and we're less and less alone. in facing these issues. In my own life, I'm encouraged by my friend who bought an e-bike to use their car less, my friends who are asking about starting a container garden on their deck to teach their daughters how to grow food. And as the article Jeff shared illustrates, it's not just our friends and neighbors or the people we know in our communities or backyards, but all over the world. It can seem insurmountable and daunting, but more and more folks are coming over that fence into the world and the reality that we have been aware of for years. And that's encouraging. But I also recommend reading the article to learn about what's happening in Spain and the techniques that work in that environment so that you have more to add to your toolkit for moving and sinking water where it's needed. Normally, I wouldn't think to share something like the Gardening for Dummies bundle that I found from the Humble Bundle, but then I remembered that I've always recommended these books and found them to be a solid entry point into a topic, and that Container Gardening for Dummies is the first one that I usually refer people to if they're looking to grow food in pots or small spaces, including sending my friends to that book to grow plants on their balcony and deck with their daughters. Though that title isn't included in this bundle, for $18 you can support the nonprofit charity Water and get 13 ebooks that cover a range of things permaculture practitioners work with all the time, including vegetable gardening, urban gardening, sustainable gardening, and the basics of growing your own fruit and veg. And this bundle ends on Saturday, the 29th of July. From the podcast, the Permaculture Podcast Discord is now public and will be where I'm hosting future live events and discussions, including a screening of Ben and Bertha, if that comes together. You'll find the link to join the Discord in the show notes. Also, this Friday, the 28th of July, I'm going to go sit down with Dr. Sarah Shear in person to learn more about her work, and the creation of Eco Agriculture Partners for some future episodes of the show. If you have any questions for her or about that organization, email those to me by the end of day on Thursday, the 27th of July, and I'll see what I can do to include those in the conversation. And that wraps up the news for now, but I've already started the next episode to follow in the near future, along with more non-news episodes coming soon. Until we meet again, join in the conversation on the Permaculture Podcast Discord server while spending each day taking care of Earth, yourself, and each other.